Right, morning, welcome all. So this morning we are not telling you what to think, we're challenging you to think because we didn't get an email yesterday, so we don't know what to think. But yeah, so as Ed said, and the run up to us kicking off the session, confusion reigns, Lee, so it's all your fault, and so you'd better take over and sort these hopeless males out around you here.
Oh dear. So having not telling you what to do or think, the topic came from Trevor. He's been doing thinking. That's part of the difficulty of him being away for a month and then coming back and diving into all the news and all these things. And Trevor's not afraid to go to Russia and China and India and Singapore and Burkina Faso and Burkina Faso and wherever else there is in the world that there might be a radio station. To learn and to understand what's happening around, what people are thinking, where are people's heads, and looking into this year as well as next year, and going into the 20s, the 2020s, and what are our priorities given all of those things. So I don't have that breadth and depth of insight and knowledge based on all of that news. And when I was thinking about, so what are my priorities, perhaps in this, especially in the light of this context, I know that I don't want to be influenced by the predictions of how terrible things are going to be. Because I know that the people who succeed don't follow those predictions. If those are what you believe are going to happen, then 100% it's going to happen. And so I saw it in 2001 when I was in the States, when 9/11 happened. We were in Nashville when 9/11 happened. We were, and then I was really that my business was flying in 2008 when the stock markets crashed and my business fell about my ears and I had to pick myself up there. And in both of those situations, I just, it was ahead, just looking ahead, just keeping going, putting one foot in front of the other. And I don't see anything changing for myself in the years ahead. As disastrous as the disasters may increase in intensity, and that's probably what's going to happen with climate change, with leadership changes, with economies in turmoil. If anything, from those experiences as well as my walking experiences, it's one foot in front of the other. So that is a priority for me, is to keep my head up, looking ahead and keeping on. And the reason for that, if that is my priority, and this again has not changed, is my family. It's as simple as that. And my family is a wide family. I don't just include, it's my children and my husband, but it's my mom who lives with me, and in the next 10 years, she goes from 80 to 90. So she's not getting younger, she's not getting stronger. And she is 100% my responsibility, even though I'm the oldest of 5. She lives with me. That means that I am the one who's going to be looking after her in whatever capacity that is. And then I have a wider family as well. As I say, I've got sisters in Australia, I've got a sister in PE, they've all got families. And we're not an isolated group of families that every now and again come together. We are a gang. And so my sense of my role and what's important and my priorities extend to that wider family financially. as well as emotionally and physically. Actually spent, just getting to Australia is a goal of mine. I'm constantly thinking, when am I next going to go to Australia? And so these are the things that are just simple priorities that drive my actions. And then the last thing I want to say is, I think during lockdown, I've learned more and more that I need less external stimulation to make me happy. That happiness, and it's a cliche, I completely understand it is, but I'm experiencing it more and more, that it's an inside job. And that what makes you content and happy in life are simple things. Sitting outside, having a cup of tea with my husband. We have the most exquisite bee eaters that circle around us every night. And just watching the bee eaters, it's a little bit of heaven. And that will continue to be priority for me.
Great, thanks, Lee. I was a little bit worried when you started talking about gangs and inside jobs and things like that. It was getting all a little bit close to home here in South Africa. But Ed, you wouldn't understand those sorts of things in the UK. I mean, you don't have gangs and inside jobs, do you? No, I didn't think so. All right, so yeah, Jasper, how's your gang and inside your job?
Morning, guys. I got no idea what the topic is about. I couldn't even pick it up there from Lee. What I picked up from Lee was almost to say, what kind of future are we envisaging, and are we going to agree with the negative out there? Or are we going to create our own outcomes? So I'll pick it up from there. As you were speaking, the word just came up to me, which is a ancient wisdom, and that says, where two or three on earth agree on anything, so it will be for them. And I remember way back, even there's always the doomsayers, and every year, if there's no bad news, they create bad news, like the inflation, and they make the inflation the big COVID, or whatever it is. And I remember some slogans in some of the shops that says, this year we have made a decision not to participate in the recession, that kind of thing. And I think that's true for all of us. And Lee, I fully agree with you. How do you see yourself adapting to what's happening around you? And I think the bigger issue is, where can I find two or three or one or two other people to agree with me on how I see the future and how I see, because if I can just get that done, that's fine. Then we'll make it happen. We'll almost create a parallel universe for us where that will be true. And if it's exciting enough, then the word will spread, and soon we will become the next thing to follow. So that's more or less where my mind is at. And I couldn't join you guys yesterday because I had an interesting day. Last year in August, through my involvement with the bank, I was invited to attend a strategic meeting from a group of farmers. Drove all the way out to Vicksburg, met them, and I connected with this one guy, Henny Viljoen from Amos Ministries. But he almost by reluctant accident got involved with the rabbit industry. So they were looking at how to make their farms more productive, and where he was farming, the sheep farming wasn't working out for him, and etc. So he stumbled onto rabbitry. And the people who manage that industry, so it's a well-known industry around the world, especially in Europe and places. But the people who started off here in South Africa did not manage it, honestly. And a lot of people, he was then one of the guys who came in when it was a hype and lost a lot of money. But then as he the thing was offered to him, and he ended up now managing the industry. And yesterday, I was invited to go with him to a farm just outside Rustenburg, which was specifically set up. They spent millions to set this up to the rabbitry standards of Europe. So to drive out there, spending the day on the farm, looking at, so all the infrastructure is there except the rabbits. So now it's a matter of just raising the working capital. But they already have some farmers, and they've got an abattoir in Carltonville. I haven't visited the abattoir yet, but I'm participating in their board on how to run that kind of thing. And interesting, this whole thing came his way last year, 2020, with COVID, with the total chaos in the financial markets. And you know what, just because you need 2 or 3 to agree on a thing. At the last minute crisis, where he had to raise money to buy the abattoir, which is a critical thing for the rabbitry, as part of the whole industry regulations and quality standards and exports and stuff like that. They found an investor company. The name was mentioned yesterday, but it's a Section 12J structure, so that there's huge incentive tax-wise for the investors through that structure. And then it's up to that structure to say, do we believe in your project? And therefore we invest in your project for a 5-year term. And that happened for him last year. And that's how they acquired the abattoir. And then because of previous stuff that he did over many years in his through his upliftment programs on farming, he then managed to structure a deal, and that was, I met him, we had a meeting last in December. In this last couple of weeks, a structure was offered to him where that farm that we saw, that's probably worth 4.5 million rand, has been donated to him. Now it's just a matter of now getting the working capital going. And in that difficult time last year, they got their licenses in place. They started to export to the Middle East. So I was just very encouraged yesterday to say, doesn't matter what obstacles you face. And, you know, they literally climb this thing step by step. But I'm meeting quality people that is coming around him to support him. And it's coming back to this thing where 2 or 3 agree. And for me, it's almost now becoming a very practical thing. Just be clear on where you want to go and get 2 or 3 to agree with you. And then that will become the next nucleus to move things forward. And I was also, when you were just starting to talk, Leon, about your passion to make a plan to go to Australia. I think, I don't know if it was yesterday the topic of, but somewhere along the line, the topic came up, where would you draw a line? And I know that I'm very vocal, and it's because I hate to be manipulated and controlled, and I don't trust any of these things that are out there. But my thing is about this whole vaccine. I don't believe in this vaccine at all. But I was thinking, if my son, if the lockdown lifts and my son relocates to Australia, and that's where my 2 grandkids are, and I have the means to travel, will I, out of principle, not be vaccinated because they are going to enforce the vaccination that you can't travel if you don't are vaccinated? So am I willing to then drop my strong resistance to the vaccination, and I would not be vaccinated for my own needs just to travel to see the world, but if it is to visit my kids, I'll probably change my mind on vaccinate and say, let's just get it over and done with. Yeah, so I think everything is very fluid, and I think we need to keep a positive view about the future, and I'm looking for 2 or 3 people who agree with me on my view. So over to you, Ivan.
Thanks. Yes, but so a man with principles without principles who can rabbit on. But yeah, let's we'll we'll take that one with a pinch of salt. So, Ed, do you like salt? I know you don't like it with rabbits, but
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still totally confused, and like Jasper, I haven't got the foggiest idea what Lee was talking about, but I think I've detected a subtext, because Lee was talking about the birds and the bees, and Jasper's going on about rabbits. So I did wonder whether sex was involved somewhere, but I'm going to steer clear of that.
it's always involved, Ed. It's always involved.
Yeah, and also. Trevor always talks about 1, 2, 3, and I can't see 1, 2, 3 anywhere in what Lee said. So yeah, I'm struggling. But she has put in the chat that the topics, what are your priorities for 2001 and ahead? And it's quite interesting that there's a French saying, and I won't say it in French because my French accent's terrible, but the more things change, the more they say the same. And I do think going into post-COVID, a lot of people will want to go back to how the way things were, especially there's some big vested interests. And I think one thing about having a crisis, things get a little bit frayed. And when they get a little bit frayed, you can pull at that thread. And if you've ever pulled a thread on a jumper long enough, you'll know it all comes to pieces. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull on those threads. And I thought it was quite interesting that, you know, the one thing that Lee highlighted with great clarity was how she enjoyed just sitting there watching the bee eaters. Well, if we don't do anything, there won't be any bee eaters. We have lost a huge number of species in the last 10, 15 years. Species destruction has been enormous. And in the UK, we're the worst. So that's the one thing I'm going to do, is perhaps find those little threads where I can make a big difference around biodiversity, climate change, the natural environment. And I think there's a lot that we can do there, because people are talking about, in the old days, housing was all about having people close together. And we've seen with COVID, it's been worse in the cities. It's been worse in areas where people are packed together. So perhaps when we regenerate towns in the future, we'll be spreading them out. And there'll be green bits in between. So that's my one priority, is to pick at those threads to bang my environmental drum. It's interesting what Jasper was saying about rabbits. Rabbits were a big thing in the UK in the 1980s. You could buy rabbit in every single supermarket in the land. Now you never see rabbit for sale. Don't know why, but it just died out. So maybe that the rabbit farm might not get there. Yeah, so one thing, that's my one priority, is to actually look for those threads that I can pick to stop people going back to the old ways. And it was really interesting what was going on in America, was mentioned earlier, I think before we started recording, with Game Store, and individual people deciding to thwart what the big companies were doing, trying to sell short in that stock, making money but by adding no value whatsoever. And real people decided they would get involved and stop that from happening. So I think, you know, there are changes going along, and maybe big money is going to lose its thing. The other thing I was thinking about was family. My family now are sorted. I've only got 2 daughters. My mum died last year. My dad died when I was at 16, so I've got no parents to think about. My sister's okay. So my kids, I've just got a watching brief now. They've both got themselves sorted. They've both got their lives sorted out. So my watching brief is just in case anything happens and I just need to step in and give a little nudge. So I think, well, family's sorted. I can just look after myself now. So I think 2021 onwards is going to be the year of me, and focus on me a bit more now. Strange enough, I've kind of picked up someone who is more like another daughter to me, and I'm just mentoring her. But yeah, me. So 1, the environment, 2, me, and 3, I just want to keep learning about other cultures, other people, other ways of doing things, other environments. And I do think, yeah, the great advantage that's come out of 2020 is the connection via Zoom or other platforms are available, and the opportunity to meet up with other people all over the world instantly. You know, I'll go from South Africa back to England. I'll probably nip off to Europe later on. I might be in America tonight. And then maybe I'll have a conversation with my daughter, so I'll be in Singapore. So yeah, for me, it's going to be learning, enjoying other cultures, just getting to sort of meet other people, take full advantage of the new technology we've got and the new way we've got of working that's come out of 2020. So I think really loads of good things have come out of 2020. The opportunity to change, the opportunity not to repeat the mistakes of the past, the opportunity to break down the sort of the structures that have dominated us. You know, the big industry, the big politics. We can now, as a individuals, as is being shown in America at the moment with that game store story, we can now make a difference via social media, via the being connected throughout the world. So I think it's really exciting times in 2021 and ahead. So I'm really positive, and I do think we will crack the climate change problem. We will crack a lot of problems. Unlike Jasper, I'm a big vaccination person, not for any selfish reason, but because if I'm vaccinated and if I make sure people in other countries are vaccinated, then I protect myself, I protect my family, because the virus can't spread, it can't mutate. And I think we in the privileged world need to make sure that those in the unprivileged world get vaccinated as well. So I think great hopes for the 10 years to come. And it's going to be me time.
Great, thanks, Ed. Right, Trevor, let's get over to you and see if you can count past 3 this morning.
Yeah, I was wanting Lee to continue just talking the whole session because I loved the direction that she was going. Then Jasper came on board and he confused me because he talked of a rabbit farm and they were struggling with productivity there. My view was just get 1, 2 or 3 rabbits and your situation is solved. So I'm not understanding the problem there. Then Ed came on and he talked of his life was sorted with his 2 daughters and he's just got a watching brief. And I've got a similar life and lifestyle, I believe, to Ed. I don't know. But there's a comfort that I hear from Ed that sort of pervades my life as well. I've also got 2 daughters, but I don't have a watching brief. I've got a blooming maintenance brief. Because one of the things that I encouraged them to do was to immediately get a roof over their heads and then get out of debt as quickly as possible. One thing that I forgot was if they remain single for the remainder of their lives, and these girls today, they all want the advantage of being involved in society, but they don't want dumb husbands around. I cannot understand why. So then they call on their father and grandfather to actually go and do all of the maintenance. So that's been my experience through 2020. But this question of what are your priorities for 2021 and ahead, I actually asked the question yesterday, and I'm glad that both Lee all of you talked about the depth of doomsaying that's around, prophets of doom. And I think what I like about our group in here is that we've been around long enough to recognize that there are peaks and valleys throughout time. And what I'm noticing right now, obviously as a result of COVID-19 and massive unemployment and people losing job opportunities, and the smart people having different perspectives about what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And no one really knows what's going to happen. I mean, if we knew what was going to happen 10 years ago, I would have a garage full of Bitcoin here in my place. And I probably would have invested in Apple and smartphone technology and all of that. So if you guys can tell me where the Apple smartphone, Bitcoin, SpaceX, Peter Diamandis, Gary Vaynerchuk's of the world are right now, and you can guarantee where I'm going to be in the next 10 years, I might be willing to speculate in that future. But that's where I'm playing at the moment, because some of us are old enough to recognize these dips that come along. Back in 2000, 2001, 9/11, that for me was one of the most negative events I had ever experienced at the time. And the rest of the world also said the world is going to completely change as a result of this event. And then we got through to the 2008 financial crisis, the world coming to an end, and the financial system just collapsing and crumbling as we've never known it to do before. Now, the discussion is that, hey, maybe the dollar's going to collapse to absolute zero. Well, for goodness sake, I'm going to get out of all my Rand dollar related investments as quickly as possible, because it might take down everything that I'm invested in. Maybe I'll want to be in a stronger currency. And I'm just so interested in the different points of view that are on the go. And two people I'm watching out of Russian TV. So all those South Africans worried about reds under the bed, I'm watching Max Kaiser. And Max Kaiser, he's a Bitcoin advocate, and he says that Bitcoin's going to go to $500,000. And he laughs at Nouriel Roubini, who's part of our network out of New York. And Nouriel Roubini, he stands up there, I think he's out of the University of New York. Or the state of New York. He turns around and says, this Bitcoin, it's going to collapse. You guys are going to lose all of your money. And Max Kaiser's sitting there laughing at him, saying, you know what, all the time that you're actually saying this, Nouriel Roubini, I've been making an absolute fortune. Who the hell is right? So what should we be doing going forward? And I think in this time, we are getting such deep swings from highs and lows at the moment that, Lee, those people who recognize that there is going to take a swing out of the lows, we've got to be able to take advantage of that. And I think that's what this group is actually talking about here. How do we stabilize ourselves while all else are falling about all over themselves and running around like rabbits? And by the way, if you'd like to apply for a job opportunity, apply to Jasper Klute, because he's looking for the rabbits of the world. He wants to put them in northern South Africa, somewhere along the line. And recognize that we're at a time where there are more and more opportunities presenting themselves. But we have to think, what are we going to do? And so what I've done in my head, and the advice that I'm putting out to everyone, my family, the whole 20's, minimize your downside risks. When you don't know what's going on, don't owe people any money. Get out of debt. man, we've been banging on this drum for 10, 20 odd years. Get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. Try and secure the roof over your head. Know that there are going to be highly speculative investments. Take some money and be prepared to speculate. I think the investment world today is almost like, well, it's worse than actually taking your money to the casino. I think the casino is now safer than most investment products. So I would suggest to you that you've got to protect what it is you've built up. And you know what, Edward, someone talked of privilege. Where would I be if I was a 21-year-old, my 21-year-old self that had absolutely no money, did not have a roof over my head? How would I be approaching the next 10, 20 odd years? And I think given everything that I see, I would, you know what, I'd go and exchange my Coca-Cola bottles again, and I would go and speculate 1,000% of whatever it was that I owned, which was very little. And if I managed to buy a bucket load of Bitcoin 10 years ago as that 21-year-old, I would be excited about the luck. But if I lost it all, I would go running back to Daddy, Ed, and I'd say, please, can I live in one of the rooms around there? As a youngster right now, I think you've got to get out, experience the world. Don't listen to the prophets of doom. And look for those that turn around and say, right now, as negative as so many people are, these are great opportunities to actually go and speculate. Don't go and throw your money away crazily. Try and find out where some of the smartest people in the world are actually speculating. And then recognize that there are individuals that have billions and billions and trillions. They're actually politicians in South Africa. Don't ask many of them because they really don't know where to invest, but go and find out the individuals who actually invested into assets at this particular time when people were throwing their assets away. Because over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, I think when you get to our age, you're going to look back and you're going to say, man, how did those cities get built? How did China actually build a city in, Ivan, you can tell me, they build those cities in months, let alone in years. How did they do it? And who owns all of those buildings? And who collects all the rental income? I think those basics are still going to be in place. But at the moment, I'm looking around at protection, minimize my downside, maximize my upside, take a little bit of money and see if there's a speculative investment. If I lose it all, I don't worry about it. And how do I protect the other 80, 90% of what it is that I've got? Oh, they're going to be interesting times.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm really confused now. So I think the rabbits have taken over, and so Jasper, your friend is on a winning streak there, I believe, at least for the foreseeable future, which is probably about 10 seconds. But yeah, I'm not too sure where to take it from here, other than to say, yeah, I think for me my priorities are quite simple. Yeah, we need to improve cash flow. I've been rabbiting on about that in our groups. So let's get the cash flow moving in the right direction. Then perhaps we can do some of these other things. So yeah, love to sit and watch the bee eaters, Lee. I'm terribly worried about the rhinos, Ed, in the Kruger Park. Those population has crashed by over 70% in the last 10 years. So our white rhino population is down to just over 3,000, and I think our black rhino population is just a few hundred left in the Kruger. And that's, through wonderful efforts of poachers and other people there. So yeah, some big challenges on our environmental side. Can we change them? I certainly hope we can. But simple priorities, I think, for me, really, this next period is. Somebody said to me once, simplify, 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 I think was a saying that I heard somewhere along the lines, Trevor. I didn't hear any simplification this morning, I must be honest, between the four of you. It just got more and more complicated for me as it went along. So can we unravel all of this? And at least we've got a weekend to try and do it, Lee. So what's going to happen on Monday?
question. What's going to happen?
You promised to push the right buttons this time.
Oh dear. Yeah, so I think I'd quite like to, you know, we've been talking about, you know, what difference can we make, and you know, all those kinds of things. And so I'd like us to maybe do some homework around this game store. I can't remember if it's game store or GameStop, but it'd be interesting to know what you think about what's happening. What is it? What has happened? What caused it to happen? And how does it make you think about where we're going? So let's. I'll put it in an email and try and express it a bit better than I'm doing now. But what I'm trying to do is to take a current event and help us to explore it a little bit deeper.
Great, thanks, Lee. And don't get lost in the matrix over the weekend, because you might just have a system failure. So other than that, have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Cheers, folks.